and she works in two spaces. One is that she's got a strong recruiting background, working in a number of different organizations. And during that time of doing this recruiting work, she discovered this need for more education about how to recruit and support a diverse workforce. And so as she continued in that work, she realized what would be best is if I go on my own and do this in a consulting capacity. So a big part of what she does is goes into organizations and really helps them flourish with their diversity initiatives to round out their workforce. Then the other part of her work is that she works individually with underrepresented clients, coaching them in the job search process. So I feel really blessed today because she's got both these vantage points, both of these areas of expertise that she brings to our topic. And I will, for anybody that came late, I will repost the fact that she is now running a diversity newsletter on LinkedIn. And please subscribe to that so that we can keep the conversations going with her. All right. With that, let me turn it over to Jen, and feel free to post questions. I'll handle the Q&A, and we're here to have a great conversation, leaning into diversity. Thank you so much for being with us today, Jen.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sabrina. And I'm grateful for having met you and being able to dive into this work around leaning into diversity when we're talking about career counseling or career coaching. So hello, everyone. And I'm really excited to be here. I just wanted to start off by expressing that deep gratitude for being able to speak to you this, let's see, we're still in this morning. And I've taken a lot of time to think about my experiences over time, and I've learned to grow grateful about all of the experiences that have brought me here to this place today to talk about such an important message. And that message is about leaning into diversity. So I share with people a lot that I've always lived at the intersection of being both ambitious and different. So in other words, I've always known that I was made for more, and I've worked hard to pursue it, but I also know profoundly what it feels like to be a fish out of water. And so that feeling of being ambitious and different in a world that views the culture of whiteness and maleness as normal and standard. So when I talk about difference, that's what I'm referring to there. And I eventually, arrived at the exact place where I feel that I've been called. I've gotten the degrees, certifications, and even the 15 years of professional experience to kind of begin to silence those imposter voices in my mind. And I actually now know that I deserve to be here. But I do want to share with you my journey, because my journey to getting here, it really wasn't that easy. Being ambitious and different, it creates this unique lived experience. And so the first time I actually remembered feeling this difference was when I took my advanced biology class. It was my first advanced class in high school. I was a senior, and little did I know that to take this class, this advanced class, meant forfeiting the comfort that came with having all of my friends with me. Nobody else looked like me in this class. And I remember feeling terrified with no words to explain why. And so I allowed my own personal feelings to take over, and I actually tried to drop out of the class. Thankfully, my teacher must have known. And so without saying a lot of words to me, she asked me to stay, and ultimately I agreed. But it was also around that time that my dad shared with me, because it was my senior year, he shared with me that he and my mom, they just couldn't afford to send my sister and me to college. We were both leaving at the same time, or graduating from high school at the same time. And as a matter of fact, there was really no plan at all, according to my dad. But thankfully, my mom had a different view, which, it happened quite often. She told my sister and me, she said, "You're going to college no matter what." And so discovering FAFSA, or financial aid, and student loans changed everything for me. for better and for worse. And you'll hear me mention it a little bit more into the story. But my mom also said to me something really significant and pivotal. She said that I needed to pick a safe major. And she gave me two options. She said, I want you to pick nursing or I want you to pick business. So those were my options. And without blinking, my major was picked. I decided to pick business. I then went on to college. I went to Virginia Tech. So go Hokies to any of you that are in the audience. So I arrived at Virginia Tech, and in a sea of 27,000 students with 4% people of color. So notice something, that's 1,080 students of color, not just Black students, which meant that there were other populations like the Asian population or the Latinx population included in that count. It is there in college that I learned three key things. The first thing that I learned is what it meant to graduate from a school that didn't prepare you for college. I remember sitting in calculus, waiting for my classmates to raise their hands, to provide answers, when everything felt foreign to me and scary, everything that the teacher was talking about. I felt stupid. I felt like I didn't belong there. And it's a very vivid memory to me. The second thing that I learned about the notion of culture shock, or, it's when you're in a quick and you're quickly immersed into a culture. And in this culture, it was made up of a population that was 96% white. And now I was expected to live, learn, and thrive. But the third thing that I learned was about the notion of the nod, N-O-D. So it's a rule that I learned on campus that because there were so few Black students, that each time you saw another Black student in passing, you acknowledged their presence with a nod. And it was as simple as a nod. It was a silent message of, I see you. I would notice that even in a crowd, we would lock eyes and acknowledge each other's presence and then move about our day. Then college graduation, leaving and going into the real world, it brought about its own troubling revelations. Many of my classmates were moving back home. And I never even realized that moving back home was an option for me. And even once I noticed that it was an option for others, I still knew that it still couldn't be an option for me. At the time, factories began shutting down where I was raised. So there were no jobs in my small rural community in Virginia. And while my classmates were going home to work their dream jobs in big cities, with the bonus of moving home to save money, I instead moved to follow my first regular full-time job. And that job actually took me to Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania is where I acquired the taste for beer. So, you know how they say that beer is an acquired taste. I acquired it because it was always free-flowing among my white colleagues. And when I couldn't afford my own food and drinks as a struggling grad, trying to pay rent, utilities, and student loans, remember those? I leaned in a little more to the beer and the wings that were free-flowing. So it was on that job that I remembered the feeling again, the feeling of being different again. Why did I feel closer with the individuals working in the warehouse than in the sales team that I sat beside daily? Maybe it was because the warehouse was where all of the Black and brown workers were. They weren't around me. Now, trying to escape the feeling of difference, I eventually moved on to begin my career in human resources. But again, I felt the difference. My supervisor and I had the exact same role. As a matter of fact, the reason that they hired me was because she needed a little bit of relief as a corporate trainer. So we split the times when she would train and when I would train on the same topics. The only difference was that she managed me and another person. So when her role became vacant, after she received a new job opportunity, I just knew that I would be a shoo-in for that position. But instead of moving me over into that role, a woman from a different department became my new boss, and I was expected to train her. So I chose to move on. The next time I felt different, the next time I actually felt the difference is when I mustered up enough courage to ask for a pay increase. At that time, I explained to my boss, who was the assistant vice president at the organization, that I was struggling to make ends meet, again, with rent and utilities and even those pesky school loans that always follow. And I'll never forget his response. And he really believed that he was trying to help me, which was, great. I understand positive intent. He said, why can't you just ask your parents for a little bit of help? And in that moment, my mind was actually blown. I started thinking to myself, was that a thing that white people did? Meaning, for me and for my family, it was never an option that crossed my mind. It never crossed my mind that if I'm struggling financially, to turn to my mom and my dad to ask for help. And it was the actual opposite in my family. We send money home. We don't put more burden on our already struggling families. And so again, I moved on. And then I went to my next job, where I stayed for several years before my boss mentioned that he was moving on to a new role. So the vacancy got posted, but I didn't apply. A part of me, honestly, was still impacted by the earlier job. Plus, the entire team knew, because my boss wasn't silent about this, that Ben, who happened to be a white male, was being groomed for the role. Everyone knew that, and it was okay. It was just standard for the in that time. So it wasn't until my boss's boss, so my boss's manager, who happened to be a white woman, she called me on a Saturday afternoon and had a long conversation with me that ended with the words, "You should apply." That I applied for the role at the 11th hour, and I got the job. I did not know that this could happen. I didn't know that someone could reach around and tell me that I was qualified enough to apply, even when I didn't believe enough in my own self. And then I entered management. And since I entered management, my world has never been the same. It was a constant battle of fitting into networks, political battles, gaslighting, and more. It was a world where no one prepared me to navigate, so I stumbled every step of the way into leadership. Because of the positions I held, I was finally able to sit at tables and to be privy to closed-door discussions that I would have never before imagined actually took place. And I felt the difference again. I started seeing clearly the obstacle course, and I'll explain the obstacle course in a second. But it wasn't just my obstacle course, the one in which we all face to varying levels of impact. And I started seeing the obstacle course faced by others. And the impact to this obstacle course, I noticed, became more serious and more complex, even when you begin to consider intersectionality. So, for instance, I could clearly see the obstacle course to, getting a job and getting promoted that's faced by women. I could see it. And then at the intersection of race, I could see the obstacle course faced by women of color. And then at the intersection of even sexual orientation, I could see the obstacle course faced by women of color who may also identify as LGBTQ+. And the list just kept growing. And it led to my desire to try and fix it. I knew that a part of fixing it, this obstacle course, was helping the employer to see how they contribute to it, but also the second part of the obstacle course in fixing it was helping the actual job seeker to navigate it. So if I haven't bored you with my life story, you may be wondering, why am I sharing with you my lived experiences? And the answer is simple, because I believe that it developed me into who I am today. This was a journey of lived experiences about what it means to be ambitious plus different. So internally, I always knew that I was made for more. Externally, the world reminded me that I was different and couldn't just follow the yellow brick road like everyone else. And so my life all comes together to make me perfectly suited to coach others who are also ambitious and different. My personal approach to my work is this: I've always wanted to become the person that I wish I had when I was younger. So I struggled to get here, but I am forever grateful for that. So one of the things that Sabrina mentioned a second ago was the fact that I do have a newsletter through LinkedIn called Increase Diversity. And a part of the newsletter is our team did a 5-part series called The Hiring System recently, where we describe the obstacle course that groups that are historically underrepresented in the workplace face. We did a composite case study using a fictional character named Keisha. And I want to take a second to describe what I meant by the obstacle course. So I'm just going to share with you how I wrote it out in the newsletter. So it goes like this. To have a career, Keisha must interact with the hiring system and all of the policies, practices, and behaviors with which companies comply to preserve it. The hiring system has a series of challenging mental and emotional obstacles that can be covert and overt. This obstacle course creates a roller coaster for Keisha, who constantly battles a war of two worlds. In one world, she wrangles an internal dialogue of, am I enough? And in the other world, she encounters external perceptions put upon her, whereby interviewers question, is she enough? And the only way to get through this obstacle course is to navigate it effectively. Navigating the hiring system can mean jumping over landmines of appropriate versus inappropriate behavior, dodging microaggressions, swimming through unconscious biases, and balancing the tightrope of assimilation versus authenticity just to be likable and to make interviewers feel comfortable. Listen, the obstacle course is real, and the more ambitious one is, or the higher one climbs this career ladder, becoming, for example, the first X, Y, or Z, the more challenging the obstacle course becomes. So I want you to even imagine, for example, and this is a real example, what this obstacle course was like for Kamala Harris to become the first Black woman picked to be VP. Now, what do you believe her executive coach or coaches talk about in their coaching conversations? Now, I want you to think about that rhetorical question for a second. Those have to be deep conversations. And so going back to my desire to help, I knew that I could help some job seekers, but then I asked, what if I could help more career coaches lean into diversity? Imagine that impact. And so leaning into diversity in context of career coaching means to learn about, respond to, and help navigate the obstacle course that your clients face while trying to get a job and while trying to get promoted. Diversity, as I define it, means different. That's all. Diversity means different. So in other words, you're helping your clients navigate through what it means to be ambitious plus different. Now, everyone has lived experiences. You may not have had as many hurdles or scenic routes as me, or maybe you've had more. You may not have had as many moments where you've questioned, am I enough? Or had others question, is she enough? Or maybe you've had more. You may not have had these lived experiences, maybe you've had others. And so leaning into diversity, it might not come naturally to some of you, and to others like me, it might just be all that you know. But here's my point. Just because it may not come naturally to you, it doesn't mean that you're off the hook. As a career coach, we don't have the luxury to lean out of the real life experiences of our marginalized or minoritized clients. You don't have the luxury of acting like there's no obstacle course or that there's a one-size-fits-all approach to landing great career opportunities, because many of your clients are experiencing lived experiences just like the one that I shared. And you may be one of a very few who have access to that person who can help shape their career trajectory. And one of the things that I share often with people, with other career coaches that I come into contact with, is if your client follows your one-size-fits-all approach to landing a job and they don't land that job, it is more likely that they will blame themselves than blame you. So you get to stand in the gap and be a bridge. And I want to do my part to help you to get there. There are 3 powerful questions that help me personally to lean in to diversity. And I want to share them with you. And I hope that they also motivate you to lean in as well. The first question, where is my resistance? This is a powerful question because it causes you to first check yourself. Understand your own resistance. What subjects do you avoid or maybe even take too lightly because you don't feel qualified, capable, or comfortable to address them directly? And then think about where you feel resistance personally. When you think about people who are totally different from you, what thoughts come to you, both positive and negative? No one's going to hear your answers. This is you having an honest conversation with yourself. Start there. Start with understanding your feelings about others without guilt, without shame, or any form of judgment. Question number 2. Ask yourself, what do I have the power to influence because of my access? You have access as a career coach to one of the most powerful systems in the nation, the hiring system. Other systems are systems like the criminal justice system, the healthcare system, systems like that. What we're talking about is the hiring system. You may not be able to change the obstacle course, right? But you may be able to influence it. For example, if you're a career coach on campus and your department has strong employer partnerships, what feedback are you sharing with employers about the experiences that you're hearing from your students that they're facing? And then number 3, ask yourself, what do I know to be true about my client and their job search experience? And this is around the question of cultural competence. I believe in building cultural competence. I believe that it should be a requirement of a career coach's job. One of the best descriptions that I've read on cultural competence is this. Cultural competence is about our will and actions to build understanding between people, to be respectful and open to different cultural perspectives, strengthen cultural security, and work toward equality and opportunity. So, for example, you may already know that women get paid 82 cents on the dollar. But did you know that Black women get paid 62 cents on the dollar, and Native American women get paid 57 cents on the dollar, while Latinx women get paid 54 cents on the dollar? As a matter of fact, if you're following me on LinkedIn, you may have seen my post this morning, because this morning, August 13th, is Equal Pay Day for Black women, which means that Black women have to work 8 months into the new year to earn what a white man earns doing the same work in 1 year. And that's where we get to the 62 cents on the dollar. Or did you know that names like Jamal and Keisha receive significantly less callbacks on their resume, even when they have the knowledge, skills, and experience to do the job as non-ethnic sounding names? Did you know that women wait to meet 100% of the requirements for a job before applying to it? Did you know that white and Asian men tend to go into more tech spaces and professional jobs, and Black and Latinx men and women tend to go into more service-based roles, which also contributes to the pay gap? So remember the story of my mother sharing with me to go into nursing or business? It goes deep, right? Have you heard of the hidden job market? The notion that jobs aren't advertised, and so to get them, you must tap into your network. But are you also aware of the network gap? So according to LinkedIn, the network gap is the advantage some individuals have over others as a result of who they know. And what they've learned through their research is that where you grow up, where you go to school, and where you work can give you up to a 12x advantage in gaining access to opportunity. And so as we're talking to people about this, this hidden job market, and go and talk to your network, you still have to be able to understand how this network gap impacts different communities. What do you know about experiences outside of yours? And most importantly, to what degree are these experiences making your clients question their own enoughness? Your ability to lean in is absolutely what matters. Now, there are days where I'm so full of gratitude that at the end of a coaching session, I literally get down on my knees and I say a prayer of gratitude because I was able to tap into an experience of my client and help them to make more sense of the obstacle course they're facing. Getting a job and oftentimes getting a promotion can be highly charged, and it can be an emotional process. And trust me, I've witnessed a lot of tears, tears of defeat, tears of doubt, tears of relief. But I've also witnessed a lot of tears of acceptance and tears of joy too. Just know that as a career coach, you are making an impact. But to make a deeper one will require you to lean into diversity. And you know, sometimes I think back to that 16-year-old girl sitting in advanced biology. Goodness, I feel emotional just thinking about it right now. But that 16-year-old girl sitting in advanced biology, scared and feeling out of place. I think about what I would say to her if I could speak to her today. And here's what I would say. You're going to go through some things over the next 20 years. There will be lots of moments where you question yourself. Lots of moments where others question your ability. And many times it will be for no other reason than because you're a woman and or because you're Black. It's not going to be easy, but everything that you're experiencing is setting you up to one day get ready for a calling. You will go through it so that one day others, just like you, no longer have to. So in closing, I have a challenge that I want everyone in this room to take to help you get started to leaning into diversity. Within the next 24 hours, I challenge you to have one of the realest conversations you've ever had with yourself and ask, where do I feel resistance? In this work of career coaching with clients who are different from me, where do I feel resistance and why? And then develop an action plan to remove the resistance. For some of you, it may mean educating yourself on different cultures. For some of you, it may mean unlearning areas of miseducation. For some of you, it may even mean therapy. And for some of you, it may mean leaving the field of career coaching because you're unable to work through your own resistance. Wherever your path leads you, just know that you're starting with one of the most powerful questions that you can ask yourself. If you're willing to commit to this 24-hour challenge, in the comments, give me a hell yes. I thank you for your time today. Let's see what we have in the chat. Perfect. I see them in there. And in asking that question, where do I feel resistance? I don't just ask myself this question when I'm coaching clients. I ask myself this question constantly. So I just wanted to put that out there. Sabrina, I'll turn it back over to you.
You're amazing.
I appreciate you.
I just feel so much emotion. Yeah. I'm almost speechless. You move me. My heart is so open.
You're gonna make me cry, Sabrina. And just to kind of put this information out there, this is the first time I've ever told my story. Publicly.
Whoa.
I spend so much time listening to other people's stories because it really means something to me, listening to other people's stories. And I struggled to tell my story. And it's a struggle from the standpoint of, is this a boring story? So it's a struggle from that standpoint, not from do I put it out there? What do I put out there? And so my answer to that is, as long as my story makes an impact, I will tell it, and I'll continue telling the story too.
So I'm just going to invite our audience to say, did this story impact you? What did you hear? What did you take in? What truth did you sense in this? What knowingness? Let's give some feedback, because it's really hard when we put ourselves out there and we're really vulnerable. So we can strengthen Jen Tardy's mission and the work that she's doing by telling her, this is powerful.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
And
thank you all for your notes.
And this is the way that we get engagement. So there's lots of things that we can take from this moment. We can take what was the sentence? We as career coaches have the power to impact a person's life, their trajectory, their career, their sense of self. We have so much power, and we just forget that we do have that much power. So recognizing our power and then leaning into diversity to do that extra bit, to listen to our underrepresented clients even more, allow them to tell their story to you so they can fine tune it and tell that story in an interview with strength and self-assuredness. So that's one piece. Another piece is that whole power of storytelling. When you're in your own workshops and being able to tell a piece of your story, you will engage with your audience the way Jen has with us. And Jen, as you do this work, include your story, include those slides. We were with you in biology.
Aww.
Yeah, we were in the room.
You want me to cry, Sabrina? I am doing everything that I can. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there's so many things I can say, but it's just that I feel that this is we've been working slowly on the issue of racism for ever in this country, and we just have this huge opportunity for anyone that's a different race, a different able-bodiedness, a different sexual orientation. We have an opportunity to make it a priority that we open ourselves and we help our employers to open, help them to see where they're having these missteps. So often it's just small things that happen that are wrong, rather than that we have big blatant ones. Yeah, those get called out, but we need to notice the small things. I've noticed when I look at the screen, I want the CCC membership to grow in its diversity. So one thing I'll put out to our community is, if you know some career counselors that look different than you or are different in some orientation, can you invite them to the CCC to be members so that we're stronger as a community because we have more representation? So that's one little thing that I want to put out as someone that can have that impact. Yeah. So comments, questions? I haven't looked at chat because I've been talking, but we have a few minutes where we can just share or ask questions of Jennifer. So I'd love for you to raise your hand to ask a question or make a comment. I know it's a little bit hard with 54. Actually, should we take the screen sharing of PowerPoint off, and then we'll open up to gallery view? Would that be good? And then we can allow people to, I'm going to say, instead of chat, to do a raise your hand feature if you'd like to make a comment or a question. Anybody there? I see Adisuela, and then I see Stacia. So why don't you take your mics off and share, please? Yeah.
I guess I just wanted to ask.
Go ahead, Stacia.
Oh, go ahead, Addie. You can go if you want.
Go ahead, Addie.
And I wanted to say, first of all, the story was awesome, but I wanted to point out the points in the story that made me just, grab my heart. I think the first place for me was hearing about your mom saying, go do this. And that's support, because sometimes who's supporting you matters a lot. And then loving the biology teacher, because many times a lot of us don't do things because we're afraid of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or not knowing what to do at all. But your biology teacher didn't have to do anything, but they just encouraged you to stay. And by encouraging you to stay, they did something. And last but not least, your boss who called you on a Saturday, because I believe that you would not sponsor anybody that you do not know. For you to know them, you have to put yourself out there sometimes to get to mentor someone or to get to sponsor them. And it's okay for you to be the one reaching out. Usually we're used to people reaching out to us to say, can you mentor me? Can you sponsor me? It's okay for you to ask somebody, can I sponsor you? And what your boss did by calling you on a Saturday to say, you know what, I think you've got this, go and apply for it, was a great thing. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that too. And you caught on to so many different pieces of what I didn't say, like the message behind the words. And so even when I'm talking about my high school teacher, she didn't have to have a full conversation with me, but I knew that she knew why I was trying to drop out of the class. And so she didn't have to say it. She just said, hey, I think you should stay, and I'll make sure that you have the right support, period. And she honored both pieces, and that's it. And even when it goes to my mother, you saw the message behind that. When we start talking about, again, something as big as the network gap, or where we're receiving information about what we study in school, we're gonna go to who's in our community. My mother and father didn't go to college. I'm a first generation. And so, but I'm so impressionable at that age. I don't know what I don't know, And so I'm going to listen to my mother. All I knew is that I didn't want to be a nurse. I didn't know anything about business, nothing. So it happened to be, you know, kind of serendipitous that it worked to my favor. And even with Joni, my boss's boss, and I still need to thank her to this day, but it's almost like I can't find the right words to tell her how appreciative I am of her, that I want to get to that place in order to thank her, because what she did was she made a massive change in my life. She changed my entire career trajectory, all because she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And she was courageous enough to pick up the phone to call me. And that courage, you know, you're like, you know, what is the courage? But that courage is in, if I'm the leader of this department, am I supposed to give somebody a call? It's Saturday. Am I supposed to call someone on Saturday? Can I get in trouble for this? I mean, it takes a lot of courage politically, and, you know, from her shoes, to be able to make a phone call like that and to say, I think you should apply. She didn't say I was going to get it. She said, I think you should apply. So yeah, I love that you saw the message behind the message with those.
Thanks for sharing.
Jennifer, I just want to say thank you so much. Your story is extraordinarily powerful. Resonate with being also first generation and suffering also from imposter syndrome and having to always question myself and seeing, you know, just taking from what you said also and putting that over on my hat as well, thinking about it. But I also attended your last session that you did with us for CCC. And one of the takeaways was about check yourself and kind of, you know, seeing, well, let me phrase it as a question, because you actually asked the question about resistance around, like, where do we feel resistance from? So I guess my question would be, as we're working with other people, whether it's in private practice or in the institutions that we may work at, how do we slowly chip away that for others as well as ourselves? Like, how do we, if we wanted to build a program out of that as well and slowly build upon the momentum of what you were talking about, how would we, and I'm sorry if this is a loaded question, but how would we go about that?
So it sounds like you're asking me, how do you chip away at the resistance?
Yes, exactly.
So I believe that the initial part of it is a personal journey. It's almost like, and the second powerful question that I ask my clients all the time is to answer, what do you desire, right? And it's a simple yet very powerful question. Nothing else should happen until you understand what your own personal desires are, as opposed to those desires put upon you. Those you shoulda, you shoulds, right? So this question on where do I feel resistance is a very personal process and journey. Once you have determined where you feel resistance, that's where I believe that you can begin reaching for external supports. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that as well. And I think I shared this when we did the composite case study, but an area of my own personal resistance that I just did not think about it until I asked myself this question is around people who are differently abled. I didn't grow up around, I didn't grow up having open conversations about being differently abled. And even when you think about statistics or data around the Black community, a lot of mental illness, for example, goes undiagnosed. So to me, it was just, oh, that's just cousin Sharon. She's just cousin Sharon. Like, it's just who she is, versus she may have a mental illness, right? And so I had to ask and it was scary to think, I'm in a leadership position and I feel resistance around people who are differently abled. So there's the guilt, the blame, and all this other stuff. If I can move that to the side for a second and ask myself, what do I need? And a big part of it is in educating myself about not just, and so when I'm talking about differently abled, I'm talking about two things in particular: better understanding mental illness, right? Or how that can connect to your abilities, but also thinking about age. And so when I'm thinking about age and I'm thinking about nursing homes, like what is my resistance? And I was able to learn it's the whole notion of impermanence. So it's not that I had an issue with people. My issue was around impermanence. I think that's the right word I'm looking for. And so that's what I needed to deal with. And that's where, you know, therapy comes into play as well too, that people will grow older and people will pass away. But it's starting that process first internally and answering the questions as real as you can without the guilt. And then it's being able to look for external resources. And your external resources may be vastly different from someone else's. And to me, it's also talking to other experts. The more I can talk to experts or interview them or just dive deeply into, you know, unpacking the topic, the more I begin to feel more comfortable around it. Did that help?
It did. And I just have one more comment. We hosted a speaker at our college, actually at Western Michigan when I was in grad school. And the speaker was Dr. Alan Johnson, and he wrote the book Privilege, Power, and Difference. Okay. And there was very mixed reviews in the room. I mean, there were some people that loved it and other people were just like very resistant to it. It was the first time maybe for some people hearing like white privilege, and there were like, these are sometimes very difficult conversations and ideas to envelop like and understand. So it was I really appreciate your very powerful story, and also I like your voice. There's a lot of people in the chat that have said that it's very soothing and calming. It's great. So thank you so much for
so funny.
I appreciate it so much.
I appreciate it.
I'm gonna pipe in just for a second, and I'm gonna say, I feel like there's some more conversation and some more questions, and there's some things in chat that I want to share. So my question to Jennifer is, would you be okay if we go until 12:45? So it's just a couple extra minutes because you have back-to-back things today.
Correct. So, okay, I can go until about 12:40, but I literally have a panel session to do at 1 o'clock. And they want me to jump on 15 minutes early, so I can make it work.
Yeah, well, let's just go 2 or 3 minutes then. We'd like you to have a little break in between. I will say that one of the things in chat was asking, can we sponsor scholarships for underrepresented population for the CCC? So I love this idea of sponsoring membership to the CCC. So this is fantastic. And then Robin has made some comments about have listening sessions with people who are members and are different with the board to say what has their experience been with the CCC, what to keep doing, or when have they felt uncomfortable if they did, what do they need to feel supported by CCC, and what would help them in their career and own career development. I loved that. So yes, as a board member, I can say I'm very open to talking with anyone about their good or their not so good experiences. I'm very, I think you guys have all seen my style. I would like to come across as being willing to be vulnerable and open and want to make this not a cliquey space. I heard that once about the CCC and I felt so sad. I want this to be come as you are, everyone welcome, no matter your experience level, no matter your color, no matter your able-bodied or sexual orientation or just, I want to really make sure that people feel they can be themselves in the space. I'm also going to say, I really think there's a lot here, and I know this is our second session with Jen. So if you think this would be a good professional development seminar, that's a fee-based seminar, that we could have another session. If you are interested in that, where we would hire her, bring her in, again, please type that into chat or add it into the survey at the end. And Jen, we have had people say, you know, things like, what an amazing story. Yes, your story hit home the point you were making and the barriers, the vulnerability in your story, amazing. I'm going to save this chat so that you really take home how powerful your story is and how you're an exceptional communicator.
I appreciate that.
There's a lot of grace and expertise melded together. It's just extraordinary. And that's what I'm seeing from people. So take this talent and have impact with more people, and let us support you in this mission. Incredible work you're doing. So any last comments or questions or anything else? I see applause coming up, so you can go down to the reaction button and click on applause to show what exceptional work this is.
Oh, that is so awesome. I wish I could bottle this moment up and just take it with me.
Well, we're recording it, so
I would open it up to get out of bed every morning. It would be my alarm clock.
we're recording it, and want you to listen to this again and again, and each of us take it in. And I want all of us to come back to this question: where do I feel resistance? And this may be a PDS, Professional Development Seminar, kickoff question that people actually do homework ahead of time and bring that. Until we get into the weeds a bit more, until we get a little more uncomfortable, that's where we make progress. We all need to go to the stretch zone, wherever that is for us. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Any last? I was
just going to say, so the only thing that I would say is that there's still a lot of work to be done. And there's still a lot of, messages that I'm ironing out, like trying to find different ways of sharing the same message in a way that really resonates. If you're interested in continuing to follow this message, just connect with me on LinkedIn, because that becomes like the central hub of anytime new things come out or new thoughts come out, it goes there. So please do. It's just, I think it's linkedin.com/in/Jennifer Tardy. I think it's that simple. If you get an error, it's not my fault.
I'm putting it in the chat right now. Hang on one second. So everybody can go grab her LinkedIn, connect with her. And the other thing that can really help broadcast Jen's message is interacting on the posts, the case studies in the diversity newsletter. By adding a comment or a like or hitting the share button, this spreads. This is so simple but so powerful. So let's do that. It was on my list to go and read more pieces of your work. I was good for the first two and made comments, and then I dropped off, but I'm back.
I appreciate you.
All right. Well, we want to let you get centered and grounded for your next session, but know that you've done great work here and you're super appreciated. And for the rest of us, we'll go into our lunch breaks, and feel free to send a little